In a world where the media's gaze shifts like quicksilver, one program dared to shine a spotlight on a harrowing crisis gripping the very heart of America: the Missing Children Milk Carton program. If the name doesn't strike an immediate chord, I bet its haunting images do. Pictures of innocent faces staring back from your breakfast milk carton, their eyes pleading for a way back home. Emerging in the 1980s, this program's initial intent was noble. It sought to alert the everyday American to the disturbing phenomenon of missing children and the looming shadow of stranger danger. It wasn't just about awareness. It aimed to transform your morning routine into a call to action. Yes, some stories had silver linings. A few children did make it back to the embrace of their families. But as with any saga, this too had its own share of dark twists. The program descended into controversy, and those once ubiquitous milk carton faces gradually vanish, raising a critical question. Why? Today, we're unraveling the threads of that mystery. Want to know how the Missing Children Milk Carton program became the sensation it was? To trace its origins, we must journey back in time to when paper milk cartons replaced the elegant glass bottles of yore in the 1960s. Cheap and swiftly produced, these cartons were a blank canvas. Local businesses jumped at the chance to advertise, making it the norm to see promotions with your morning milk by the 1980s. In the dawning rays of the 80s, the suburban streets of Des Moines, Iowa held a secret. As families began their day, a young paper boy named Johnny navigated the lanes on his bicycle. Every morning, he was shadowed by his father's watchful eye. They had a routine. Johnny would ride ahead, throwing newspapers, while his father followed. The night prior to Johnny's disappearance, he made a plea to his father, asserting his belief that he was mature enough to do the paper run solo. His father, protective as ever, declined, instructing Johnny to wake him up for the next morning's route. But on that fateful morning of September 5th, the allure of independence proved too tempting for Johnny. He ventured out alone, pushing his bicycle and pulling his red wagon loaded with newspapers. As hours passed, a ripple of unease began to spread through the community. Calls flooded the paper company with complaints of undelivered papers. And then, Johnny's father stumbled upon the jarring sight of his son's upended red wagon and bicycle, a chilling tableau just 2 blocks from their home. Witness accounts painted a fragmentary picture: Johnny, on his bike, conversing with a stranger in a truck. Yet nothing seemed amiss. The boy appeared to be merely seeking directions, but beyond this sliver of a clue, Johnny's trail went cold. His vanishing sent shockwaves through the community, a haunting enigma that lingered in their collective psyche. This angst was compounded 2 years later when history repeated itself. On August 12, 1984, another young paper boy, Eugene Martin, evaporated into thin air, echoing the chilling circumstances of Johnny's case. Both boys shared eerie parallels. Eugene was out on his paper route, last seen in an early morning exchange with an unknown individual. The communities were rife with speculation, certain that these twin tragedies were interlinked. However, the aftermath of Eugene's disappearance bore a pivotal twist. A relative of Eugene, employed at the local Anderson and Erickson dairy, hatched a novel idea. What if the community could be the eyes they desperately needed? He proposed replacing the dairy's regular ads with the faces of the missing boys. The idea was embraced, and in September 1984, milk cartons bearing the faces of Johnny and Eugene appeared in Des Moines groceries. This simple but powerful initiative caught the attention of Walter Woodbury from Hawthorne Melody Dairy during a business trip to Des Moines. Recognizing its potential, he introduced the idea to the Chicago police. The initiative rippled out, gaining momentum. By December of 1984, the future senator of California, Stephen Glazier, spearheaded a statewide campaign. This led to the inception of the National Child Safety Council's Missing Children Milk Carton program. One face that became emblematic of this movement was that of Eden Patz. Before Johnny and Eugene's heart-wrenching tales, there was Eden. In May of 1979, 6-year-old Eden vanished from the bustling streets of Lower Manhattan. His short walk to the school bus, a journey he'd taken countless times under his father's watch, marked his last known whereabouts. When he failed to return home, a frantic search ensued. His disappearance not only gripped the nation, but led then-President Ronald Reagan to designate May 25th as the National Missing Children's Day. Thus, when the Milk Carton program was launched, Eden's was the face that stared back from homes across the nation, a poignant reminder of the vulnerabilities of youth. Stepping into the narrative that unfolded during this era, we find ourselves in the grip of a heartbreaking story. A story of missing children, their faces popping up on milk cartons all over the country, bringing the pain and uncertainty of their families to the breakfast tables of America. It is often argued as to which child's face was the first to appear on these milk cartons. Was it Johnny Ghosh, the paper boy from West Des Moines, or Eugene Martin, another young lad from the same town? Or was it Eden Patz, the young boy from Lower Manhattan, whose disappearance garnered significant national attention? While there may be conflicting reports, it is important to understand that each of these cases represents a critical point in the timeline of the Missing Children Milk Carton program, a journey marked with sorrow, hope, and unending questions. As the program expanded, the initial reluctance of the dairy industry gave way to a widespread adoption of the initiative. By March 1985, around 700 of the total 1,800 dairies in the country were participating in the program. According to the National Child Safety Council, this led to a surge in sightings of missing children by almost 30%. However, it's important to make a distinction between a rise in sightings and the actual recovery of missing children. An increase in reported sightings does not necessarily translate into successful rescues. These poignant images of missing children were not exclusive to milk cartons. They began to appear on envelopes, trucks, billboards, grocery bags, pizza boxes, and even utility bills. The question that naturally arises, though, is whether these initiatives were truly effective. Unfortunately, it appears that concrete evidence supporting their effectiveness is largely lacking. Although there were isolated instances where a child was found because a witness saw their face on a milk carton or a pizza box, these cases were far and few between. Even the claim by the National Child Safety Council, the organization hosting the program, that sightings of children increased by 30%, offers no real metric of success without corresponding data showing the actual recovery of missing children. In the early stages of the program, the Lily Times reported that of the 14 children whose faces were depicted on milk cartons, 7 were returned home. While this may seem like a successful recovery rate, a closer examination reveals a less promising picture. Only one of these 7 children was actually attributed to the milk carton program. The others were mostly teenagers who had chosen to run away for a week or two and then returned home of their own volition. Despite this reality, news outlets chose to report a 50% success rate, a headline that encouraged more dairies and other businesses to participate in the program. However, it seems this number was generously inflated across the country to justify the program. The use of a statistic stating that 2 million children go missing every year further fueled the fear and paranoia surrounding child abductions, leading to the stranger danger epidemic of the 80s. This fear, although grounded in the protection of children, was based on a misunderstanding of the actual statistics. The number 2 million painted a picture of children being snatched off streets by strangers in vans, contributing to a palpable atmosphere of fear. This resulted in an onslaught of public safety announcements and guidelines advising children to never get in a car without a password from their parents or engage with unfamiliar individuals in public spaces. While these precautions were not entirely unfounded, the reality of the situation was that the 2 million figure was inflated. The vast majority of these reported cases were not confirmed abductions, but rather instances of children getting lost for brief periods or cases where the police were called out of an abundance of caution. According to a Department of Justice survey from this period, of the 800,000 confirmed reports of missing children, only 115 were classified as stereotypical abductions. situations where a stranger had transported a child and kept them overnight. Although even a single missing child is a tragedy, the reality is that the actual number of stereotypical abductions was quite small relative to the overall population of the United States. And so, we are left to grapple with a historical narrative that, while compelling and heartbreaking, may not accurately reflect the effectiveness or impact of the Missing Children Milk Carton program. The overwhelming number of missing children cases typically stem from situations like children running away from home or entanglements arising from divorce proceedings. Specifically, during divorce settlements, there are situations where a parent, not legally entitled to do so, might pick up the child. Such incidents can escalate into a significant argument, often leading the aggrieved party to call the police. The prevailing issue was the broad categorization of these cases. Instances where children ran away for just a day or two and then returned were clubbed under the umbrella term of missing children. Such miscategorizations had long-standing repercussions on child-rearing norms of that era. An entire generation witnessed the closing down of their neighborhoods during Halloween, plagued by the fear of mysterious vans lurking in the vicinity, poised to kidnap children. Schools curtailed outdoor activities, opting not to allow children to play outside, driven by the looming fear of strangers with malicious intentions. Consequently, it became a norm for families to sit down with their children and use the missing child on the milk carton as a cautionary tale, often narrating harrowing tales of human trafficking rings, even when the truth might have been far more benign, like a child simply staying at a friend's house for a few days. However, this prevalent practice brought about an unintended consequence. As families across the U.S. made milk a staple in their meals, the missing child became a recurrent feature at their breakfast table. Adults, faced with a changing gallery of missing children, gradually became desensitized. In contrast, the younger members of the family, seeing children of their own age tagged as missing, grew increasingly fearful. Esteemed pediatricians like Benjamin Spock and T. Barry Brizolton were vocal critics of the milk carton program, attributing a rise in child paranoia to the frequent exposure to these cartons. Such a program might have been justified if it genuinely resulted in saving children. Undoubtedly, the safety and well-being of a child surpass another child's momentary discomfort. However, there was substantial debate surrounding the actual efficacy of the milk carton program. It seemed as though the fervor and practices of the 1980s were an exaggerated reaction to the relatively lax attitudes of the 50s and 60s, where missing children were not given adequate attention. The juxtaposition between the well-intentioned milk carton program and the grim realities of missing children posed another challenge. While the program's inception was met with widespread approval, its efficacy was increasingly called into question, especially when children began to harbor unwarranted fears. Many families would routinely familiarize themselves with the missing child's details, ready to assist if they ever came across them. However, what many failed to realize, or perhaps chose to ignore, was the brutal truth surrounding missing children. Even with the advancement of technology and improved investigative tools today, if a child remains missing for over 48 hours, the likelihood of finding them alive diminishes drastically. Most child abductions end tragically soon after the kidnapping. The bureaucratic delays from reporting a missing child to finally having their face on a milk carton is simply too long. Towards the end of the milk carton program's tenure, many of the featured faces were not genuinely missing in the dire sense of the word. They were typically children reported missing due to misunderstandings or minor disagreements. For those that were genuinely in peril, by the time their faces became household visuals, their chances of a safe return had significantly diminished. This created a grim cycle where families would invest emotionally in the well-being of the child on the carton, only to be confronted with disheartening news about their fate. The cycle repeated with every new face, gradually leading to a collective fatigue and skepticism about the program's merits. In spite of the mounting criticisms and faltering public favor, it's essential to note that the Missing Children Milk Carton program had its share of remarkable success stories. The tale of Bonnie Lohman serves as a testament to these cases. Bonnie, merely 3 years old, was abducted by her mother, fleeing her father's home. Bonnie's mother and stepfather then embarked on an unexpected journey with their captive child, living transiently across Saipan, Hawaii, and eventually settling in Colorado. With the constant movement and evasion, they were aiming to escape the law enforcement's radar, having committed child abduction. Bonnie, who hadn't experienced any formal education due to her circumstances, wasn't permitted to socialize outside her immediate family circle, although she gradually managed to befriend their Colorado neighbors. During one rare occasion, Bonnie accompanied her stepfather to a grocery store and, much to her surprise, discovered her own face on a milk carton in the dairy aisle. Having not attended school, Bonnie was unable to read the word "missing" printed above her face. She merely thought it peculiar to find her own face displayed on a dairy product. Amusingly, in one account, Bonnie mentions that her stepfather, with seemingly misplaced overconfidence, drew attention to the milk carton bearing her face, seemingly unperturbed by the fact that it was displayed due to their crime. He even went so far as to purchase the milk carton, and upon finishing the milk, allowed Bonnie to cut out and keep the picture of herself. Bonnie carried this cutout, playing with it merely because she found it intriguing. One day, she left the picture in a box full of her toys at her friend's house. Her friend's parents found the picture, noticed the word "missing" above it, and promptly alerted the police. The authorities apprehended Bonnie's mother and stepfather, successfully reuniting Bonnie with her biological father. This is perhaps the most striking example of a case where the milk carton program directly facilitated the rescue of a missing child. There were a few more instances where people claimed the program helped them recognize and rescue children, but Bonnie's case is unique in that the milk carton played the principal role. However, such instances of unambiguous success were far from common. The continuous cycle of featuring children, most of them white, on the milk carton, and the subsequent public frustration when they remained missing, led to significant criticism. The disproportionate representation of minority children, mostly on local milk cartons, also attracted deserved scrutiny and indignation. As the program evolved, it shifted from featuring high-profile missing children cases to a broader range of cases, many of which were less severe, often involving spousal disputes or instances of children running away. Critics questioned the reason for the dilution of the program's focus and why the standards for featuring missing children seemed to become more lax over time. In response to this puzzlement, historian Adam Garfinkel pointed out a curious development. The government began to offer tax breaks to dairy companies for featuring missing children on their products, viewing it as a public service. The more faces you had on your milk cartons, the larger your tax deductions. This incentive perhaps offers a plausible explanation for the declining criteria for selecting children to feature on the cartons. Moreover, the program was further undermined by the grim endings of many of its poster child cases. For instance, Etan Patz, the first child to be featured nationally, was never found, and the details surrounding his case were exceptionally disturbing. The investigation was fraught with complexities, involving a suspected serial child abuser and an unreliable confession years later. Eugene Martin, another featured child, was also never found, and no leads emerged other than an unidentified person he interacted with on the morning he went missing. The case of Johnny Gosch was particularly perplexing. From the day Johnny disappeared in 1982, leaving behind a wagon filled with newspapers, until 1999, no significant leads materialized. Then, out of the blue, Johnny's mother made a shocking claim during a conference. She recounted an encounter in 1997, where two grown men visited her home, one of them claiming to be Johnny. After verifying his identity through a unique birthmark, she and her long-lost son had an hour-long conversation. Johnny allegedly revealed that he had been kidnapped by a human trafficking ring and had only recently managed to escape. He also warned his mother that he might never be able to see her again, further deepening the mystery of his disappearance. As the narrative deepened, Johnny was described as still being in hiding due to the looming threat from the human traffickers. Despite the intensive police investigations that followed, No tangible leads were ever unearthed. Another person emerged, claiming to have knowledge of Johnny because they too were abducted by the same trafficking syndicate. However, upon further investigation, this claimant was exposed as a fraud. This led many to speculate that Johnny's distraught mother may have experienced a psychological episode and fabricated the tale. In a further twist, in 2006, she made another startling revelation. She produced a photograph, which had been mysteriously left on her doorstep, showing 3 bound and gagged men. She was certain one of them was a grown-up Johnny. Yet, a Florida police officer debunked this claim, recalling an identical image from the 1970s. Upon investigation, the men in the photograph were identified and confirmed that the photo was a consensual setup. Tragically, it appeared that someone had played a cruel joke on Johnny's grieving mother. As the years passed, many of the milk carton children's cases, even those with extensive media coverage, left a chilling void in the public psyche. With a litany of issues, from questionable case selections, the fear it instilled in society, neglect of minority children's cases, and dubious motivations stemming from dairy tax breaks, the milk carton program faced its demise. The 1996 introduction of the Amber Alert system marked its eclipse. This new alert mechanism, now familiar to many, provided real-time updates about missing children, including descriptions and crucial information about potential abductors. Amber Alert brought immediacy and precision that the milk carton initiative sorely lacked. Technological advancements have since played a pivotal role in enhancing the chances of recovering missing children. To provide a comparison, in 1990, around 62% of missing children were found alive and well. By 2011, this figure had leaped to an impressive 97%. The influence of Amber Alert in this shift is undeniable. A 2022 survey attributes over 1,114 successful recoveries directly to Amber Alert notifications. While I traversed the tumultuous journey of the milk carton program today, it's worth noting that its intentions, at least at inception, were undoubtedly pure. The fact that around 700 dairy plants across the U.S. chose to print over 5 billion milk cartons, sacrificing advertisement space, speaks volumes of their dedication. Even if, over time, external influences skewed the program's trajectory, its inception was rooted in altruism. Molly Bish, in 2000, is believed to be the last child featured on a milk carton. Regrettably, in a pattern that became all too familiar, her remains were discovered 3 years later. The milk carton program stands as a testament to society's evolving approach to child safety. Before its emergence and the formation of the National Child Safety Council, missing children were, shockingly, grouped with missing adults, with no distinction between them. It's thanks to such initiatives that missing children became a distinct concern in public consciousness, spurring policy and practice changes. In the aftermath, one can argue that the milk carton program, for all its flaws, acted as a catalyst. Without it, Amber Alert and other modern child safety mechanisms might never have seen the light of day. The enduring images of children like Eugene Martin and Johnny Gorsuch, forever etched in the collective memory from milk cartons, set the stage for an overhaul in child safety norms. It's a chilling yet compelling chapter in history, one that underscores the intersections of fear, media, community, and activism. If you've been with me on this deep dive, I hope you found it as captivating as I did. It's a testament to the complexities of human society, and even if tinged with sadness, I thank you for staying with me till the end. It's been an enlightening journey, one that underscores the power of collective effort and memory.